So say this. First of all, we have different types of customs duties. Have a look into page number 137 segment, that's it, 28 types of customs duties and evaluation. A very important topic. So from this itself easily you can expect some 8 marks to 10 marks from this itself. So first, what are the various types of customs duties that we have? We are going to discuss. So basic customs duty. So basic customs duty is payable at the rate of 10% on the assessable value, but it will be given in the exam itself as to what will be the rate of basic customs duty. And social welfare surcharge will be at the rate of 10% on basic customs duty. So we don't have at present, that is education cess and secondary and higher education cess. And then we have integrated tax, that is IGST, which is payable at the rate given in the question. So 12% or 18% as the case may be. And while computing GST, remember, you need to add customs duty. Why we need to add customs duty while computing GST? Because if you remember, section 15 subsection 2 clause A, what does it says of CGST Act? Any taxes, duties and cess by whatever name called other than GST will be included while arriving at the value, correct? So therefore, for the purpose of computing IGST, you need to take value under customs, add all customs duties, and finally we need to compute IGST. And same way GST compensation cess. So wherever GST compensation cess is applicable on the imported goods, like how you compute IGST, the same way we need to compute GST compensation cess. But you don't have to worry about as to what are the goods for which GST compensation cess are applicable, because that will be given in the question itself as to this product attracts a GST compensation cess at the rate of so and so, like that it will be given. So the way in which IGST is computed, the same way you need to compute GST compensation cess. So these are the 4 basic levies that are there when it comes to import of goods, only import of goods. In case of export of goods, only basic customs duty is payable, but others are not applicable in case of export. Sir, social welfare surcharge, no. Social welfare surcharge is also not applicable in case of export. It is only the basic customs duty that is applicable. Even IGST is also not applicable. GST compensation is also not applicable if export of goods is without payment of IGST. So there are 2 options available which we have seen in refund chapter under GST, that is export of goods upon payment of IGST or export without payment of IGST under bond or annuity. Suppose if you are exporting upon payment of IGST, then this IGST is payable on export, but you are going to get it as a refund. And export without payment of IGST under bond or annuity, you don't have to pay. But we don't have to pay social welfare surcharge, that's for sure, only the basic customs duty that is applicable. Now, they can definitely ask one particular question here, that suppose if the basic customs duty with respect to a product is exempted, whether IGST is also exempted? No. So the exemption of IGST do not depend upon the exemption with respect to basic customs duty. So exemptions under customs, when they have given, that is only for the purpose of basic customs duty. For IGST you need to refer to the GST tariff. Suppose if that product which is imported is exempted under GST tariff, you don't have to pay IGST on import of that. But just because it is exempted under customs, it does not mean it is also exempted under IGST. So IGST you need to pay, no doubt about it. Then next thing is that social welfare surcharge. Social welfare surcharge, suppose if the basic customs duty is exempted, whether social welfare surcharge is also exempted? Actually speaking, it should be, because social welfare surcharge is computed at the rate of 10% on the basic customs duty. But recently, government has given some notices to many exporters, many importers, asking them to pay social welfare surcharge, because the basic customs duty is only exempted on the product, so social welfare surcharge is payable. So because of this, so there are diverse views. But for your exam, you remember, when basic customs duty is not payable, social welfare surcharge is also not payable, because the social welfare surcharge is computed at the rate of 10% on the basic customs duty due to that reason. Then social welfare surcharge may not be given in the question. Even then you need to compute social welfare surcharge. So just because the question is silent, it does not mean you don't have to pay social welfare surcharge. You have to compute. But what about IGST? If there is no information about IGST, then leave it. You don't have to compute. But up to social welfare surcharge, you need to compute. So these 4 are known as basic levies in case of computation of customs duty. Okay. Then next thing that we need to understand here is that what about the old indirect taxes that continues or not? That is CVD and SAD we had. So whether that CVD, countervailing duty in order to counterbalance excise duty, SAD to counterbalance sales tax, is it applicable at present also or not? See, CVD and SAD are applicable at present with respect to some notified goods which was earlier covered under in excise duty and even continues now. So therefore whether CVD and SAD is applicable or not depends upon what is the leviability under GST. So first let's try to understand. Alcoholic liquor for human consumption not covered under the ambit of GST. So therefore we have state excise duty, central sales tax and value added tax. Now you are importing alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So no need to pay IGST. Instead we need to pay only CVD. So SAD is also not payable. As excise duty is there, CVD is there. As sales tax is there, SAD should be there. But SAD they have omitted. So on import of alcoholic liquor for human consumption, we don't have to pay IGST. What we need to pay is just the CVD. Then in case of petroleum products, also the same. So in case of petroleum products, okay, you can see that in page number 139. So in case of petroleum products, on domestic sale, we need to pay central excise duty, central sales tax and VAT. Whereas in case of import, we don't have to pay IGST. So as excise duty is there, so CVD is applicable, and as sales tax is there, SAD is applicable. CVD refers to countervailing duty, SAD refers to special additional duty. And next one, tobacco and tobacco products. On tobacco and tobacco products locally manufactured and sold, domestic, we need to pay central excise duty as well as GST. Whereas on import, we need to pay on import of the tobacco and tobacco products. As excise duty is there, CVD also will come. As GST is there, IGST also will come. Okay. Whereas all other goods, we don't have excise duty or sales tax, only we have GST. So on import we have to pay only IGST. CVD and SAD is not applicable. So therefore this part which already we know in GST is now connected in customs. So this can be tested in exam in MCQs. Okay. So in MCQs they will be testing as to which of the following taxes are applicable in this case. So be careful with respect to that. In case of alcoholic liquor for human consumption, basic customs duty is there, and instead of IGST we have CVD and SAD is not there. So what is the rate of SAD? SAD is at the rate of 4% on total value. So wherever SAD comes, GST will not come. So therefore don't ask me that question. Sir, when SAD is there, what is the treatment of GST? How it is possible? They both are mutually exclusive. So SAD is applicable in which case? Only in case of petroleum products, correct? Only in case of petroleum products, SAD is applicable. Now, on petroleum products where there is GST, so impossible to have SAD and GST combination. Okay, so don't worry, how you compute IGST the same way SAD should be computed. That is total you do. And finally, the last step will be SAD, special additional duty at the rate of 4% on the total value, basic customs duty and all customs duties. So finally SAD. So ditto. Like how IGST is computed, the same way SAD is computed. So SAD and IGST will never come together. It is mutually exclusive. Then CVD and IGST are mutually exclusive, not necessary. If you see tobacco and tobacco products, there is both CVD as well as GST, IGST. So what we need to do? CVD will come after social welfare surcharge. After social welfare surcharge, CVD will come, which will be value plus basic customs duty plus social welfare surcharge. On that CVD will be computed at the given rate. Okay, at the given rate we need to compute CVD, and IGST normally you compute in the last. Only thing CVD will come as the third line after computing social welfare surcharge. The first line will be basic customs duty, the second line will be social welfare surcharge, the third line will become CVD if it is there. Okay, so that is with respect to this here. They may not ask questions because it is old levies, but they can definitely test you in terms of MCQ. It is possible to test. Okay, now that's what I have given note 1. So come back to this previous page, that is page number 137. In the past, on imports, countervailing duty under section 31 subsection was levied in order to counterbalance excise duty and special additional duty, and special additional duty under section 3.5 was levied to counterbalance sales tax. However, now on account of GST, its applicability is limited to few goods. Then in case of exports, only BCD is applicable, and provided if exports are chargeable to duty. Okay. So you need to understand here one more point related to GST refunds. If exports are chargeable to export duty, you cannot go for option 2. That is export without payment of IGST under bond or LUT. So one of the disqualifications for refund of unutilized ITC on account of zero rated supply is that in case when exports are subject to export duty, you cannot claim refund of unutilized ITC. So in that case, only one option you have, that is export on payment of IGST option. Don't forget, because when you pay customs duty, pay IGST also. Don't go for the other option. What is the other option? Export without payment of IGST under bond or LUT. Because if you go for that option, you will not get the refund of unutilized ITC. Okay. So because it is specifically given in the rules. So therefore, if exports are chargeable to duty, we also require to pay IGST. So we need to go for which option? So only one option available for GST refund. Only one option for GST refund. For GST refund, what is that one option? Export upon payment of goods upon payment of IGST. Upon payment of IGST. Then after this basic levies, after this basic levies 4, we have additional levies. These are known as additional customs duties. These additional customs duties are protective duty, safeguard duty, countervailing duty, and anti-dumping duty. So these are the 4 additional duties that we have: protective duty, safeguard duty, countervailing duty, and anti-dumping duty. So the other name for this countervailing duty, as we already have come across one countervailing duty, so you might get confused. So that's the reason why I'm just giving you this. The other name for this countervailing duty is anti-subsidy duty. I have not created, it is given in your study material itself. So anti-subsidy duty. Okay. So countervailing duty you can also remember as ASD, anti-subsidy duty. So these are the 4 additional customs duties that we have. So we are learning it as a comparative. Okay. So first, why there is protective duty, safeguard duty, countervailing duty, and anti-dumping duty. All these are to protect the domestic manufacturers from the risk of imports. So when lot of imports are happening in a particular period, what will happen? The domestic manufacturers will not be able to survive in their business because the dependency on imported products is increasing. So what is the way out? So for which they wanted to levy lot of additional duties. For example, so recently toys. So lot of Chinese toys were being imported. So in order to avoid the import of Chinese toys, so what they have done is that they added some anti-subsidy duties and anti-dumping duties and inflated the price of the toys. So therefore, compared to that imported toys, so the locally made toys are feasible, so it is available and people are using. So this is how the domestic manufacturer will be protected. So to protect the domestic manufacturer, so these additional customs duties are there. In that, anti-dumping duty is on account of unfair export by exporter. It is unfair export by exporter. Why? So what that exporter is doing, he is making lot of units and he is dumping that units to India at a cheaper rate that is less than their selling price in their country. For example, one person manufactures a product and sell it to you at 100 rupees and he is selling to some other person at 10 rupees. Now definitely that is what dumping. So why is he dumping that way? In order to recover his fixed cost, and he is trying to dump that into other country. And what will happen because of that? The other country manufacturer is getting affected. So that is known as unfair export by exporter. And then countervailing duty, that is anti-subsidy duty, is on account of unfair export by exporting country. So the exporting country is following this unfair trade practice. Exporting country, how? Example, China. China will give lot of subsidies to the manufacturers in China so that these subsidies leads to, these subsidies leads to what? Reduction in the cost. These subsidies leads to reduction in the cost. So because they are enjoying some subsidies, so then the cost of production will come down. When cost of production will come down, so manufacturer will be able to sell at a cheaper rate in India. See, countervailing, that is anti-subsidy duty, anti-dumping duty, in both cases, the product is being imported into India at a cheaper rate. So the reason differs. Anti-dumping duty is on account of exporter's mistake that he is dumping, whereas anti-subsidy duty is on account of subsidy granted by the exporting country when they are exporting it to India. Okay, so in that case the anti-subsidy duty will come. Then safeguard duty, fair exports. So there is no unfair, everything is fair, but it is a mistake of the importers that they are importing it in large quantities. So as goods are imported in large quantities, okay, it is fair exports only, but we are importing in large quantities, import in large quantities. So then there will be safeguard duty, import in large quantities, then there will be safeguard duty. Then when it is protective duty, from time to time the Tariff Commission of India, so the Tariff Commission of India will give the recommendations to the central government. As per the recommendations of the Tariff Commission, so what central government will do will be inflating the basic customs duty. So protective duty, don't understand it as an additional customs duty. So it is an enhancement to the basic customs duty. For example, wheat, that is atta. Atta is being imported into India. When atta is being imported into India, already atta is available in India. So that is the staple food for many people in India. So then why the hell atta is being imported? So what is the reason for importing? So people feel like imported atta is more hygienic, organic, and the quality of the food is good. So then in that case, what Tariff Commission will do? Tariff Commission will give recommendations to the government of India, that is central government, to increase the basic customs duty. Accordingly, what government did? Basic customs duty on atta increased to 40% from 10%. 40% we need to pay as basic customs duty itself, which means the price at which you buy 1 kg atta. So the same 1 kg atta, if you need to purchase it, import it, so it's better to purchase here 3 kgs. Okay, so therefore that much they will inflate the price of the goods. So that is the logic behind protective duty. So protective duty is not an additional customs duty, but it is an enhancement to the basic customs duty. And section 6 deals with protective duty. All these sections are of Customs Tariff Act 1975. It is not Customs Act 1962. So don't make that mistake of writing Customs Act 1962 in this place. So it is Customs Tariff Act 1975. It is Customs Tariff Act 1975. So section 6 is protective duty, and section 8B is safeguard duty, section 9 is anti-subsidy duty, section 9A is anti-dumping duty. Okay, so these are the section reference. So which section? Customs Tariff Act 1975. Authority to levy. Protective duty is levied by whom? Central government on the recommendations of Tariff Commission. What about safeguard duty, countervailing duty, anti-dumping duty? So central government suo motu will not levy this. So first, the domestic industry which is getting affected should make an application. So when they make an application, then the government, after conducting the inquiry, investigation, they will be levying this safeguard duty, countervailing duty and anti-dumping duty. So levied by central government upon receipt of complaint or information. And what is the relief that it gives? So in case of protective duty, the relief is against to protect the interest of any industry established in India against imports. Then this safeguard duty, serious injury to the domestic market on account of imports in large quantities. I told you this. And what is the need of that is anti-subsidy duty. So serious injury to the domestic industry on account of subsidy enjoyed in the export pricing. Okay, then anti-dumping duty, serious injury to the domestic industry on account of import of goods at a cheaper rate. That is this. What is the extent of relief? So protective duty is increase of basic customs duty, safeguard duty to the extent adequate to prevent or remedy. So usually safeguard duty will be an absolute a percentage. For example, 30% of the assessable value or 30% of the landed value, like that it will be given. Okay, so but usually it will be percentage of assessable value or percentage of landed value. Okay, so percentage of AV or percentage of LV. So what is AV, sir? AV refers to assessable value. The value on which we need to pay customs duty is known as assessable value. AV refers to assessable value. AV refers to assessable value. AV refers to assessable value. whereas LV refers to landed value. What is the difference between assessable value and landed value? So landed value is nothing but assessable value plus basic customs duty plus social welfare surcharge will be known as landed value. Don't add IGST pa. So only assessable value plus basic customs duty plus social welfare surcharge, then you will be getting landed value. So depending upon the question, suppose if the question is silent, sir, you take assessable value. If the question is silent, you take assessable value. If the question specifically says that this is this percentage of assessable value, this percentage of landed value, so then you take that specific information. In the absence of that information, we need to take percentage of assessable value only, and we need to write the note clearly mentioning that as there is no information regarding computation of safeguard duty on what, so therefore assessable value is considered like that. But mostly 99% of the cases they will be giving as to what will be taken. Okay. Then this is in case of safeguard duty. So clearly they will mention in the question itself safeguard duty this much percentage on what. Then anti-subsidy duty. Anti-subsidy duty we have two, either a percentage or an absolute. Okay. So anti-subsidy duty we have two here, either a percentage or an absolute number. Okay. So anti-subsidy duty. Anti-subsidy duty we have either a relative measure. Relative measure means percentage of AV or LV. Percentage of AV or LV, assessable value or landed value, that is a relative measure. Whereas an absolute measure is also there for computing the anti-subsidy duty. What is that absolute measure? Means amount. Directly we arrive at the amount. What is that amount? That is subsidy margin or injury margin, whichever is lower. Okay. Subsidy margin or injury margin. Subsidy margin or injury margin. Subsidy margin or injury margin, whichever is lower. Okay. So this will be taken as the anti-subsidy duty. There are two ways. Relative, a percentage is given in the question. That percentage on AV or LV, that will also be given, either assessable value or landed value. Suppose if they have not given, you need to take what? So percentage of AV should be taken. Okay. And then absolute measure. Suppose if they are not giving a percentage, definitely the information related to subsidy margin or injury margin will be given. So what is subsidy margin? So to amount of subsidy, how much subsidy that has been granted on that product, that is known as subsidy margin. Injury margin, injury, who is getting injured? Domestic manufacturer is getting injured. That is, we need to take the normal selling price in India minus landed value of the imported goods should be taken as the injury margin. Okay. So what should be taken as the injury margin here? Injury margin will be nothing but injury margin is injury margin. So how to take injury margin? Injury margin is nothing but normal selling price in India. Injury margin is nothing but normal selling price in India, boss. Normal selling price in India. Normal selling price in India minus landed value of imported goods. Landed value of imported goods. So this will be taken as the injury margin. Okay. Again I am repeating, anti-subsidy duty absolute, it will be either subsidy margin or injury margin, whichever is lower. And subsidy margin means how much amount is the subsidy, whereas injury margin means what is the price at which it is being sold in India, normal selling price in India, minus what is the landed value. While taking landed value, we need to take assessable value plus basic customs duty plus social welfare surcharge. So that difference will be taken as the injury margin, whichever is lower will be taken as the anti-subsidy duty. Then we have anti-dumping duty. Anti-dumping duty also to the extent of margin of dumping. So what is that? So anti-dumping duty always absolute. So we don't have relative measure in anti-dumping duty. So it will be dumping margin or injury margin, whichever is lower. So to the extent of margin of dumping. So how to compute that? Dumping margin, okay, dumping margin or injury margin, dumping margin or injury margin, whichever is lower. whichever is lower should be taken. Dumping margin or injury margin, whichever is lower should be taken. Injury margin already we know. Then what is dumping margin? Dumping margin refers to who is dumping. The exporter is dumping. What is the price at which they are normally selling in their country minus what is the price at which they have exported. Okay. So how to compute this dumping margin? So dumping margin is nothing but normal selling price in exporter's country. Normal selling price in exporter's country. Normal selling price in exporter's country. Exporter's country minus normal selling price in exporter's country minus export price to India. Minus export price to India. Export price to India. That will be taken. Okay. Normal selling price in exporter's country minus export price to India. So here I need to really apologize you, because actually up to previous batch I was telling this only, normal selling price in exporter's country minus export price to India. So in my regular batch I used to add that information, but that I missed. So because of which November exam, so students have faced the difficulty. Okay. So that is, there is one more point here. So because in summary now, so when we take it like a revision, so many points will skip or will just get slip away. So therefore here one more point is actually there, that is, what if the selling price is not available in the exporter's country? So in that case, that exporter will be selling to a third party or third country. So not India. The exporter will be selling to a third country. So take that as the normal selling price. Okay. So normal selling price in exporter's country. So we are determining dumping margin. So dumping margin will be normal selling price in the exporter's country minus export price to India. But what if the normal selling price is not available in the exporter's country? One more proviso is added which says that the price at which exporter sells to a third country, that will be taken as a normal selling price minus export price to India. Because with just a simple point, one 5-mark question is coined out. Okay. So see that question. Yes. So this is the question which I was referring to. That is, in November 2021, 5-mark question is asked based on this point. That is this proviso. Messrs. PCB Limited has imported printed circuit boards for sale in India from country X, which are liable for anti-dumping duty. You are provided with the following details. Country X does not sell these goods in the domestic market. However, it exports the same printed circuit board at $200 per piece to another third country. The printed circuit board is sold in the domestic industry at $175 per piece. PCB Limited has imported the printed circuit board at $100 per piece. Landed value of the printed circuit board is $125 per piece. Compute anti-dumping duty payable by Messrs. PCB Limited for 1000 pieces of printed circuit boards it has imported during the year, assuming conversion rate at the rate of 75 per US dollar. So what is that we need to do? Very simple. So we need to take anti-dumping duty. What is the formula for anti-dumping duty? Anti-dumping duty equals to dumping margin or injury margin, whichever is lower. So first we are taking dumping margin. So this is section 9A of Customs Tariff Act 1975. So anti-dumping duty will be dumping margin or injury margin, whichever is lower. Okay. Dumping margin or injury margin, whichever is lower. So what is that? So first dumping margin you take. So what is a dumping margin? So what is the price at which they are normally selling in their country? So we don't have that information because country X does not sell the goods in the domestic market. However, it sells to a third country. So the third country is $200. So $200 you take minus what is the price at which it is exported to India? So the printed circuit board is sold in domestic industry at US dollar 175 per piece. Don't take that. PCB Limited has imported the printed circuit board at 100. If they have imported at 100, means the exporter has exported at 100. So $100. So therefore the dumping margin will be $100. Then injury margin. What is the injury margin? What is the normal selling price in India? So the normal selling price in India is the printed circuit board is sold in domestic industry at the rate of 175 per piece. So $175 per piece. So $175 minus what is the landed value of the imported goods. So landed value of the printed circuit board is $125 per piece. That will be equals to $50. Whichever is lower, that is $50 will be taken. And how many printed circuit boards are being imported? 1000 pieces. Therefore anti-dumping duty equals to 1000 pieces into $50 per piece into the exchange rate of 75 rupees per dollar. So you will be getting, so 1000 into 50 into 75, that is 37,50,000 rupees will be taken as the anti-dumping duty. So for doing this you will get 5 marks. Okay. So just one point that you need to know here is that, so in the selling price in the local market is not available, so the price at which they export it to a third country should be taken, not to India, third country. So that is only taken. So if this point, so many students have done injury margin but they missed out the dumping margin, so because of which they have not got the marks. Okay, please be careful with respect to this. So this is about this point, dumping margin or injury margin, whichever is lower. So we understood how to compute the anti-dumping duty, then anti-subsidy duty and safeguard duty. Then investigation. In case of protective duty, there is no investigation because already the recommendations of the tariff commission is in place now. So what is the need of investigation? But in case of other three, that is safeguard duty, anti-subsidy duty and anti-dumping duty, so definitely investigation should be done because that is not suo motu based on the application by the domestic industry due to that reason. So then until the time that investigation is completed, can there be a provisional duty? Yes. So 200 days is the time limit within which they need to complete the investigation if it is safeguard duty. If it is anti-subsidy duty, 4 months. If it is anti-dumping duty, 6 months. So that is the time limit within which they need to complete the investigation, and until the time they are completing the investigation, they can levy a provisional duty, and upon finalization of the investigation, they can levy the final duty, and if there is any extra amount to be collected, that can be recovered, or if extra amount is collected, that will be refunded. Okay. So excess on account of finalization, refund allowed. Suppose if there is any shortfall, that will be collected. Okay. And once the safeguard duty or anti-subsidy duty or anti-dumping duty is levied, what is its validity? Safeguard duty's validity is 4 years and it can be extended for a further period of 6 years, but the maximum period is 10 years. It cannot go beyond that. For how many years we will protect the domestic industry? So the domestic industry has to recover. So that is the objective. So 4 years plus it can be extended for a further period of 6 years, but in no case it can go beyond 10 years. Whereas in case of anti-subsidy duty and anti-dumping duty, so there is no maximum time limit. They can keep on extending, but the review after every 5 years. So first initial implementation 5 years, and which can be extended for a further period of 5 years at a time, which means that review will be done after every 5 years whether we need to continue anti-subsidy duty and anti-dumping duty or not. So therefore that is what we have as the time limit. This is for duration. And exemption from levy. Exemption from levy, imports by 100% EOU or a unit in SEZ. So now that is also applicable in case of anti-dumping duty. Import by 100% EOU or unit in SEZ or unit in SEZ. Okay, unit in SEZ. Actually, this unit in SEZ is a latest amendment, but that is of Finance Act 2021 amendment. But this is a retrospective amendment, so they have already, this benefit was there for SEZ but not specifically mentioned, so now they have mentioned it. So literally even for unit in SEZ also this benefit of anti-dumping duty should be given. Okay, and therefore imports by 100% EOU. This is common for safeguard duty and anti-dumping duty, not for the anti-subsidy duty. So this is only for safeguard duty and anti-dumping duty. What does it mean? So that is if there is a 100% EOU or a unit in SEZ, they are importing these goods that attract safeguard duty or that attracts anti-dumping duty. There is no safeguard duty or anti-dumping duty. However, if such imported goods are cleared by 100% EOU or SEZ to a DTA, means indirectly they are importing and they are selling it in DTA, so then this benefit is not available. So this benefit is available only when if it is completely consumed in a 100% EOU or a unit in SEZ. Okay. Then retrospective levy, yes, there can be a possibility of retrospective levy. That is, today they are passing a order for levy of safeguard duty or anti-dumping duty, anti-subsidy duty with effect from a previous date. So in case of safeguard duty, that is not possible, but it is possible only in case of anti-dumping duty and anti-subsidy duty. Within 90 days prior, they can do that. That is, so this date, today, they are passing an order to implement this anti-dumping duty and anti-subsidy duty. So 90 days, within backdated, 90 days prior, yes, they can do that. Okay. And now, there is one more measure called as safeguard measure, tariff quota. So safeguard duty is one of the safeguard measure to curtail the imports in large quantities. We have another measure called as tariff quota. So tariff quota is also one more measure wherein they will be fixing this much can be imported without payment of any extra duties. If you are importing beyond this, so there will be some customs duty, extra customs duty. So that is known as tariff rate quota. Okay. So that's a new amendment. So this already we discussed, and so overall computation of customs duty we understood, that is what are the various customs duties involved. Now the computation. So the computation will involve 3 steps. Okay, mainly 3 blocks. So this computation will involve mainly 3 blocks. So what are the 3 blocks that we need to understand? So in the first block, what we will do is that we will be taking basic customs duty. Sir, this anti-dumping duty will not affect the basic customs duty or assessable value, right? Yes. It will not affect. It will not affect. Okay. So see this. Block 1. So what is that we do in block 1? First, let's take assessable value. Let's take assessable value as rupees 1 lakh. Let's take assessable value as rupees 1 lakh. And we need to take basic customs duty. So what will be taken as the basic customs duty? Basic customs duty at the rate of 10% of assessable value. So that will be equals to 10,000. So this will be taken as a basic customs duty. Then social welfare surcharge at the rate of 10% of basic customs duty. So say 1000 rupees will be taken as the social welfare surcharge. Then CVD under section 3 subsection 1. This is to counterbalance what? Excise duty. So this is to counterbalance excise duty. To counterbalance excise duty. So that will be at the rate of, say that rate will be given. Okay. And it will be computed on assessable value plus basic customs duty plus social welfare surcharge. So it will be computed on this. So whatever is the amount that we will take. So this is the block 1. So this block 1, so that total is known as, so customs duties excluding additional customs duties. Customs duties excluding additional customs duties. Customs duties excluding additional customs duties, that is 11,000. So this will be taken as block 1. This will be taken as block 1. Okay. Now the another block. What is that another block? To these customs duties, whatever is there, we need to add. To these customs duties, whatever is there, we need to add additional customs duties. What are the additional customs duties? Safeguard duty under section 8B. Safeguard duty under section 8B. So how to compute safeguard duty I told you. And thereafter we need to take anti-subsidy duty, ASD, anti-subsidy duty under section 9. And I told you how to compute that also. And thereafter we need to take anti-dumping duty. So that anti-dumping duty will be under section 9A. So that anti-dumping duty should be taken. And if you add this, so that will be known as customs duty excluding IGST. Customs duty excluding IGST. Okay. So 11,000. So this will be block 2. This will be block 2. So in this block 2, we are taking additional customs duties. Okay. Now the last block. The last block involves IGST. So for this, whatever we have got, we need to add IGST. IGST at the rate of, it will be given in the question, say 12% it is given. So that 12% should be computed on what? That 12% should be computed on assessable value plus block 2. Assessable value plus block 2. So whatever is the block 2 total, up to that we need to take. That is, so what is that we have? So 1 lakh is the assessable value. So plus 11,000 rupees we need to take. Multiply with 12%. Okay. So that is 1,11,000. 1,11,000 into 12%. That is 13,320 will be taken as the IGST. And after this IGST, we need to add GST compensation cess. Same way. GST compensation cess at the rate, whatever is the given rate, and it will be computed on assessable value plus block 2. Assessable value plus block 2. So that value we will be taking. And suppose if there is SAD, so that SAD also will be computed in the same way. So SAD at the rate of, what is SAD? Special additional duty under section 3 subsection 5. So SAD under section 3 subsection 5, this is to counterbalance what? This is to counterbalance sales tax. This is to counterbalance sales tax, and this will be computed on what? So this will be computed at the rate of 4% on what? Same way how we compute IGST, the same way we need to compute this. So that is assessable value plus block 2. So on that only we need to compute. Okay, so when we compute it on this, so whatever is the value that we will take, and we should understand here that IGST and GST compensation cess, IGST and GST compensation cess and this SAD are mutually exclusive, so both will not come in the same place. Okay, and this total will be called as, so it is the total that we have got, 11,000 plus 13,320, that is 24,320. So this 24,320 is known as total customs duties payable. So total customs duties payable. So this is block 3. Okay, in block 3 majorly we take IGST, GST compensation cess and SAD. So this procedure for computation of customs duty, if you remember, it will be easy for you. So definitely there is a chance of asking a question in exam related to computation of customs duty. Understand? Now, any doubt in this here? Computation, any doubt? No? So the steps I have given, sir. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. So what is it we need to do? So that steps only I just converted into this way. Okay. Now we are moving on to the next area, that is valuation in case of imports. So we have completed so far, that is types of customs duties. Now we are moving on to valuation. You will get two types of questions. Only a question on valuation you may get, or a question that involves computation of customs duty you may get, or both, that is value under customs, that is value of imported goods, as well as computation of customs duty. So both also you can get. Okay. So first see what should be taken as the assessable value in case of import. So we are going with transaction value. See, valuation under customs, we have two methods: specific duty method, ad valorem method. Specific duty method means, so they will be specifying for each product how much duty you need to pay. So depending upon the number of products, number of units of that product that you are importing, so that much of customs duty you will be paying. That is known as specific duty method. Whereas ad valorem method, ad valorem method means when duty is payable as a percentage of some value, that is known as ad valorem method. In ad valorem method there are two methods: tariff value method and transaction value method. Tariff value means, so department, customs department, that is CBIC, will tell this much is the value on which customs duty is payable. So we don't have to determine the value in that case, because already they are doing it. Whereas transaction value, so transaction value we need to determine, that is importer or exporter should determine the transaction value, and on the transaction value customs duty is payable. Clear or not? So now what we are trying to understand here is the transaction value. What will be taken as a transaction value in case of import? In case of import, we will take CIF as the CIF price, cost, insurance and freight as the transaction value. So that should be taken as a value for the purpose of import and pay customs duty accordingly. and in case of export only FOB price will be taken, that is free on board price. Now we need to understand here what is the link between FOB price and CIF price. Okay, so first you take FOB price, and for that FOB price you need to add insurance and freight, so then you will be able to get the CIF price. Okay, so for example, what is FOB price? So here transporter himself is incurring as to what is the freight and insurance, so we don't know, it is free on board, so the transporter himself will be incurring the freight and insurance which we don't know. So in that case what we need to do, so we need to ascertain as to what is the insurance and freight. Suppose if insurance and freight information is ascertainable, we'll take the actuals, otherwise we will be taking 20% of FOB if it is freight, and if it is insurance we will take 1.125% of FOB. So that's what we are trying to understand. So suppose in exam what is that we need to do, FOB price is given in the question. So now insurance you take, ascertainable or not ascertainable, ascertainable given in the question itself, take actuals. So only when it is not ascertainable, that is not given in the question, you need to take 1.125% of FOB. Okay, whereas freight, so freight if it is air freight or other freight, we need to check. If it is air freight, ascertainable, yes, take actuals or 20% of FOB, whichever is lower, because the air freight is restricted to 20% of FOB. You cannot go beyond 20% of FOB. So due to that reason you take actuals or 20% of FOB, whichever is lower. And suppose if it is not ascertainable or it is other freight, then in that case, that is not ascertainable, you will be taking 20% of FOB. What if it is other freight but ascertainable? Take actuals. Only for air freight we have a comparison, that is actuals or 20% of FOB, whichever is lower. Whereas if it is other freight, take actuals, and if it is not ascertainable, whatever may be the freight, 20% of FOB will be taken. Okay. Now, what is this FOB? So should we take the FOB that is given in the invoice or FOB after making the adjustments? We should take FOB price after making the adjustments. To the given FOB price, we need to make some adjustments in terms of Rule 10, Sub Rule 1. So after making those adjustments in terms of Rule 10, Sub Rule 1, then whatever the FOB price that we get is the revised FOB price. To that revised FOB price, we need to do this 20% or 1.125% computation. So don't take it on the given FOB price. Okay. Now, what should be taken as the freight? So here in the freight, we have certain points. What is that? That freight, whatever we have discussed, shall include handling charges. It's actually not called as actual handling charges. You remember it as handling charges. So freight shall include handling charges, but not at the place of import. At the place of import, if there is any unloading charges, etc., that should not come. So all handling charges means loading charges and any charges that are incurred during the transit. But after import, so unloading charges or any landing charges like that, if it is there, don't take it into the value. That should not come into the freight. Then ship demurrage charges. So whenever a ship is anchored at an outer space and from there the goods are brought into the shore, so for which that ship should pay ship demurrage charges. That ship demurrage charges is also part of the freight. Then lighterage and barge charges. Lighterage and barge charges are for bringing the goods from the ship to the shore through small boats. So they need to pay lighterage and barge charges. So that lighterage and barge charges should also be included into the freight. So therefore that freight, whatever we take, that includes handling charges, ship demurrage charges, barge charges and lighterage charges. And when you take 20%, very important point, when you take 20% of FOB, all these charges are already included. So again don't add. So whenever you are taking 20% of FOB, for example, so say freight is not ascertainable. Freight from exporter's place to importer's place are not ascertainable. But we have paid ship demurrage charges and lighterage charges which is ascertainable. Very simple. So take 20% of the FOB only as the freight. Don't add this lighterage, bar charges, ship demurrage charges, because when you take 20%, the 20% includes all the freights. Okay. So all the freights and all the charges. So no need to include it again. So that is this point with respect to the freight. Okay. Then what are the adjustments that we need to make with respect to the FOB price? So there are few adjustments we need to make here. First one is the commission. So commission, which commission? Is it a buying commission or is it a selling commission? Sir, what is buying commission and selling commission? Buying commission means commission paid by the importer. Who is buying? Importer is buying. So commission paid by the importer to his agent is known as buying commission. That will not be included in the value. Why? So because importer will be incurring some expenses. If importer gifts some necklace to his wife, will that also you will include? Why you will include? That is his expenditure. Let him incur any expenditure. Yeah, what is our botheration? Suppose if he gives some necklace to exporter's wife only, we should include, because it is an indirect consideration to exporter. Okay. So therefore, whenever he incurs some expenditures, so why we need to include it? So is it on behalf of exporter he is incurring? No. So don't include. Suppose if it is a selling commission. So what is selling commission? Commission paid by exporter to his agent. Now that commission importer is paying, definitely you include, because actually who should pay that money? Exporter should pay, but who is paying? Importer is paying. So selling commission you need to include. But if it is buying commission, don't include. Understood or not? See that buying commission, that is commission to importer's agent paid by importer, it will never come. And selling commission, that is commission to exporter's agent paid by exporter, so it will not come. But where the problem is, exporter's agent commission paid by the importer is an indirect consideration to the exporter, so that should be included in the value. And the other name for selling commission is local agent's commission. Why it is called as local agent's commission? Because the exporter's agent will be in India and importer's agent will be in outside India. So the exporter's agent will be in India, so it is known as local agent's commission. Okay, that is this first point. And second point, suppose if any material is being imported, and that material which is being imported, like so there is some material here. So if the importer in India is sending that material abroad, or any goods are sent abroad, or any intangibles are sent abroad to the exporter, which are used in manufacture of finished goods, which are then imported. So now, even though that finished goods do not include the value of the materials or anything which is sent by the importer, because the exporter will not charge for it now. So a raw material importer is sending, so manufacturer outside India will convert it into finished goods and send. So in the finished goods invoice price, so definitely raw material cost will not be taken, because it is sent free of cost by the importer. But we need to add that material cost into the price, because it is, we need to ascertain the value of the imported goods, the real value, the true value of the imported goods. So in the true value of the imported goods, we need to include that. What if it is some capital goods? So don't include the full value, include the apportioned value. And what is it is intangible, same way you include the apportioned value. So any material sent by the importer to the exporter, including capital goods or intangibles, to be included in the value at actual cost or at apportioned cost, up to you. Used in manufacture of imported goods. If it is apportioned cost, they will give the data. That is, this capital goods has an installed capacity to make 1 lakh units. And in the first import, they have imported 15,000 units. So total cost divided by 1 lakh units into 15,000 units, that apportioned cost will be taken. Okay. So this should be added to the FOB price. This is the second adjustment. Now third adjustment. Any other expenses recovered by the exporter from the importer. Any other expenses recovered by the exporter from the importer. When is it recovered? Before import. Definitely you include. So design and engineering charges or development charges, any kind of charges which are incurred by the exporter and recovered from the importer before import, definitely it should be included in the value. If it is charged by the exporter to the importer after import, is it a condition of sale? Example, installation charges. So exporter has to do the installation charges, so that will be done after import. So as a condition of sale, so that installation charges will be included in the value. What if it is post-import charges of exporter to importer, but not as a condition of sale? For example, importer has imported a product and asked for customization of the product. So when importer is asking for customization of the product, so what exporter will do, will send a technician to India to do the customization. Okay. So then in that case, whether that customization charges will be included in the value? No. For example, actor Prabhas, Bahubali actor, so he imported one Lamborghini orange color car. Okay, so that car, he did not like the color. Everyone was commenting that he joined BJP party. So people have that fear. So now they cannot happily say that they are part of BJP, because others will hit them. So that fear is there. So due to that reason, he wanted to change the color of the car. So for that reason, he will not send it to one local mechanic shop to do the painting, Lamborghini Carrier. So therefore he would have requested that car manufacturer, they would have sent their technician to India to do this change of color. So from orange color it has been changed to black color, and for that they will be collecting definitely some amount, somewhere easily 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs they will be collecting. So whether that will be included in the value? No, because it is post import charges and that is not as a condition of import. Okay. So that is with respect to this other expenses recovered by exporter. Now this is the adjustments that we need to make to the FOB price. After making this adjustment to the FOB price, then we need to add freight and insurance. Now you will be getting the value of imported goods. On that value of imported goods, already we have seen how to compute the customs duty payable. Illustration on transit. That is, say a ship which is carrying some goods is first bringing 10,000 tons to Gujarat port, and it is unloading that 6,000 tons in Gujarat port, and thereafter the same ship is going to Chennai port by carrying 4,000 tons, and those 4,000 tons are unloaded in the Chennai port. This is known as goods in transit. Now for bringing the goods to Gujarat port, that is the first port, they are incurring a freight and insurance of 28 lakhs, and thereafter for taking the goods from Gujarat port to the Chennai port, the freight and insurance is 4,40,000, and the FOB value is 80,000 rupees per ton. Now what will be taken as the assessable value of 6,000 tons that are unloaded in the Gujarat port? So we will take first 6,000 tons into 80,000 rupees per ton, that is 48 crores will be taken, and plus freight and insurance. Freight and insurance will be, so 28 lakhs means 0.28 crores divided by 10,000 tons into 6,000 tons into 6 by 10 we will take. Why 6 by 10? Because freight we are apportioning for 6,000 tons. So into 6 by 10, so that will be 0.168 crores. So total 48.168 crores will be taken as the value of 6,000 tons which are unloaded at Gujarat. What about the value of 4,000 tons which are unloaded at the Chennai port? So the value of these 4,000 tons unloaded in the Chennai port, first we need to take the FOB value. So FOB value 80,000 into 4,000 tons. So that will be 32 crores. 32 crores. Then add freight and insurance. So what is that freight and insurance? Original freight and insurance. So original freight and insurance 28. So out of that 0.28 crores into 4 by 10 will be related to Chennai port. That is 0.112 crores. And this transit freight and insurance. What is that? 0.44 crores should also be added. Not 0.44 crores should also be added there, because it's just 4,40,000 only. So 0.044 crores should be added. So 32.156 crores will be taken as the value. So from this illustration, what is it you can understand? You can understand that transit freight will be included in the value. Transit freight means from the original port to the subsequent port, any freight insurance is incurred, that will be added to the value. Okay, that is this 32.156 crores. What if the same is under transshipment? So this is in case of transit, and what if it is under transshipment? Okay, so what if it is under transshipment? If it is under transshipment, so what is transshipment? Taking from one port, one ship to another ship. So the same ship which is coming to the original port is not going to the destination port, but another ship is transporting the goods. So say for example 10,000 tons are imported in one ship in a place in Gujarat. So there 6,000 tons only to be unloaded. Only 6,000 tons to be unloaded in the Gujarat port. Okay, and remaining 4,000 tons to be unloaded in the Chennai port, and that 10,000 tons, 6,000 tons are unloaded in Gujarat port and in another ship, so they have transshipped 4,000 tons, so that 4,000 tons are taken in another ship to Chennai port. Now in this case what will happen? See, the transshipment freight and insurance will not come in the value. So therefore in the 4,000 tons we will not take the transshipment freight and insurance. So see the value of 6,000 tons normal. whatever we have computed before, the same will be taken 48.168 crores, 48.168 crores. Whereas in case of that 4000 tons, we will take so only FOB value plus the original freight only will be included, but the transshipment freight will not be included. So therefore 32.112 crores will be taken as the value in this case. Okay. So after determining the basic value, that is transaction value, after making the adjustments, what if transaction value is not applicable? We need to proceed to customs import of goods valuation rules 2007. What does it say? As per rule 3, first you need to take transaction value. That is whatever we have determined so far is the transaction value. And we need to make the adjustments with respect to freight and insurance. And suppose if that value is not acceptable by the customs department on account of comparable imports, they may reject that value. Okay. So customs officer shall not have any doubt as to the truth and accuracy of the declared value. Suppose if there are comparable imports, based on that comparable imports, the customs officer may reject the value which we have declared and may determine the value. And even in other case, suppose if it is a transaction between related parties, so if it is importer and exporter are related, or if price is not the sole consideration, or if it is a conditional sale, or if it is a restricted sale, in that case we will never be taking transaction value. So 4 conditions. That should be unrestricted sale. The sale made by the exporter to the importer should be unrestricted sale. He should not place any restrictions on the importer. It should be unconditional sale. Unconditional sale means the exporter should not place any restrictions on the importer or put any conditions on the importer. And unrelated person means supplier and recipient, that is exporter and importer should be unrelated, and price must be the sole consideration. If all these conditions are satisfied, then we will take transaction value. But even of these conditions satisfied, if the customs officer is of the opinion that the value is not correct, so he may reject the value. That is what rule 3 says. Now, so suppose if transaction value fails, what is that we need to do? Take the transaction value of the identical goods. So that is rule 4. Remember TIS DCR. TIS DCR. Okay. Remember the TIS DCR. First transaction value. Second identical goods. Transaction value of identical goods. TIS. S for similar goods. So transaction value of similar goods. If that also fails, DCR. D for deductive value. C for computed value. R for residual value. TIS DCR. T for transaction value, I for identical goods, S for similar goods, and D for deductive value, and C for computed value, R for residual value. So if transaction value fails, then we need to go for identical goods. What is identical goods? Identical goods are also imported goods. It is like comparable. Okay, identical goods are also imported goods. When? So at or about the same time, not necessarily the same day, at or about the same time, and having the same physical features, quality. So there are no changes, having the same physical characteristics, quality and reputation. For example, if I am importing a washing machine, so which is LG brand, and comparable Samsung brand washing machine can be taken, so same reputation, yes, we can take. So it is of the same reputation. LG and Samsung, same reputation you can take. But when you are importing a IFB washing machine, don't take Samsung washing machine as a comparable, because reputation is completely different for IFB versus Samsung. So like that. So physical characteristics should also be same. I am importing a washing machine with steel drum. So the comparable should also be steel drum, not plastic drum. I am importing 6.5 kg. The comparable should also be 6.5 kg. I am importing top door. The comparable should also be top door, not front door. Okay, like that. So same physical characteristics, quality and reputation. And produced in the same country. I am importing from Korea. The comparable should also be imported from Korea and produced by the same person, but that is preferably not mandatory. So I am importing from LG, and the other import is from Samsung, so not necessarily the same producer. So preferably same producer, but not compulsory. So this is known as identical goods. So 4 points should be satisfied. Identical goods are also imported goods having the same physical features, quality and reputation, and imported from the same country and same producer preferably. And if these four conditions are satisfied, those comparables we will be taking as identical goods, and we need to make certain adjustments. What are the adjustments that we need to make? Adjustment with respect to difference in the quantity. We are importing 2000 units, that is 1000 units. Had they imported 2000 units, what is the price at which they will be importing? So do that adjustment. And next, difference in the transportation cost. We imported to Chennai port, but the comparable is imported to Mumbai port. So what if they import to Chennai port? Some extra freight will be added. So make that adjustment. And difference in commercial level of importation. We imported from manufacturer, they imported from distributor. So now what if they import from manufacturer? So they would have got a best price. So that price will be taken. So that adjustment we need to make. So three adjustments we need to make. First four conditions, three adjustments. What are the three adjustments? That is adjustment with respect to difference in quantity, adjustment with respect to difference in the freight transportation cost, that is adjustment with respect to difference in the commercial level of importation. After making these three adjustments, if we get more than one value, so take whichever is lower. So if multiple comparable transactions are identified, the lowest of such value shall be considered. Okay. So making this, so far they have not asked question, so definitely they can frame a question based on this. Then rule 5. Rule 5 refers to assessable value, that is transaction value of the similar goods should be taken. So what is the meaning of similar goods? Similar goods means that it is also imported, but need not be same. It is commercially interchangeable. So then for a top load washing machine, can a front load washing machine be taken as comparable, similar? Yes, but for washing machine, fridge will not be taken as comparable. So commercially interchangeable with the goods being valued, but produced in the same country, produced by the same manufacturer, preferably, not compulsory. And adjustments. Here we have extra adjustment. What is that extra adjustment? Not only with respect to the quantity, transportation cost, but also with respect to the difference in engineering material work. Because so we are not taking it directly same physical features. So there might be some change in the physical features. So because of which we need to make the adjustment with reference to difference in materials and engineering work. And even in case of similar goods, if we get more than one value, so we need to take whichever is lower. Okay. Then rule 6. Rule 6 says that suppose if you are not able to apply identical goods and similar goods, then either take computed value or deductive value, that is interchangeable. Between computed value and deductive value we can interchange. First we can go for computed if not deductive, or first we can go for deductive if not computed. So there we can interchange. Rule 7 and rule 8. Rule 7 talks about deductive value, rule 8 talks about computed value. Deductive value means do it reverse. So that is, see the selling price in India after importation. So after importing the goods, so the first level after importation, you take the selling price in India and do the backworking minus all post importation expenses. If you take out, you will be identifying price at the time and place of importation. That is known as deductive value method. Selling price of imported goods or identical goods or similar goods sold to an unrelated buyer minus post importation expenses including customs duty, etc. If you take out, you will know the price at the time and place of importation. This is known as deductive value. Whereas computed value means you take the cost of production. So after taking cost of production, add profit and general expenses. But remember, whether we need to take the freight and insurance from factory to the port as a part of general expenses or not? No, that should not be taken as a part of general expenses. Okay. So from factory to the airport or factory to the port, or any handling charges from factory to the airport or port and loading charges there, that should not be taken into profit, that is into the general expenses. So that is not part of general expenses. Okay. So therefore don't take it. It may come in FOB. It may come in FOB, but don't take it in the general expenses. Plus freight and insurance referred above. So whatever freight and insurance, actual ascertainable, not ascertainable, that we will take. So this is how we arrive at the computed value method. Little bit critical. So definitely you need to solve one question on computed value method. Okay, before you go for exams. Then rule 9, assessable value equals to best judged value. best judge value. Suppose if you are not able to determine as per identical goods or similar goods or computed value or deductive value, etc., then based on the best of the assessment made by the customs officer, they will determine the value of the imported goods, and if you are okay with it, you pay. Otherwise, you go on a appeal against the best judgment assessment order. Okay. So this will be the rules in case of import. Then in case of export, what will be taken as the assessable value? We will take assessable value at the time and place of exportation, that is FOB price. So no adjustments to it. Whatever is the price prevailing at the time and place of exportation will be taken, that is FOB price will be taken, and to that FOB price we need to make few adjustments. Okay. So rule 3. So that is adjustments are not required. Suppose if that FOB value fails. Why FOB value fails? Again rule 3. Suppose if the supplier and recipient are related, exporter and importer are related, or proper officer is not satisfied that the declared value is correct. So proper officer should satisfy that the declared value is genuine, and then so a related party transaction also it will be taken, but usually they will reject it. So even in case of related party, transaction value may be acceptable. So it all depends upon the customs officer. So if the officer rejects the export value, then FOB price will not be taken. Then what will be taken? Transaction value of goods of like kind and quality. This like kind and quality is like your identical goods. So exported goods having the same physical features, quality and reputation, and produced in the same country, produced by the same person. Okay. So all these conditions. And adjustment shall be made to difference in quantity, difference in transportation, difference in commercial level, more than one price, lowest price. So this is ditto like identical goods. Similar goods we don't have. Computed value method we have, that is cost of production plus profit and general expenses. Don't add freight and insurance. That will not come because FOB price we are taking. Suppose if that is also not ascertainable, then we will take best judgment assessment value. Okay. With this, we completed valuation under customs. Types of customs duty and valuation under customs. This is the major area in customs. Okay. Any doubts up to this year?
Yes, sir. So these valuation rules when will be applicable, sir? Means when
transaction value fails. When transaction value fails. When transaction value fails, suppose if it is imported goods, customs officer rejects the transaction value, whatever we declared in our bill of entry or shipping bill, then valuation rules will come. Or there is a related party transaction, or price is not sole consideration, or there are some conditional import, means exporter will put the conditions on the importer so to make the sale, and exporter restricts the importer to make the sale. So in those cases the transaction value will not be accepted. Okay.